How's it going, Yankee fans? My name is Alex, and my co-host here, Ryan Garcia, and today we're here to talk about Brian Cashman. He's at the GM meetings in Las Vegas, and right now we're learning a lot about what the Yankees seemingly aren't going to do, but I'll tell you what, I think that a lot of it's just, for lack of a better term, coach speak, and kind of just backing his players, remaining confident in them in case he's unable to offload some guys, but there is some interesting stories coming out of, the GM meetings, and notably that Cashman has been negotiating, has been involved in listening to a lot of different trade options and opportunities, specifically for the infielders. So kind of want to talk about that, some of the infielders that might be worthwhile trading, some of the guys we want to keep around, and really just what the value is. Like, what do you go out and get? What are you looking for in exchange for valuable infielders right now? Some of them aren't as valuable. You look at, IKF and Josh Donaldson, maybe not as valuable as a guy like Peraza, definitely not as valuable as a guy like Peraza or even Gleyber Torres. So, there's a lot to discuss here, Ryan, but, what are your thoughts on Cashman's comments so far? Kind of opening things up a little bit, but really standing behind his players up to this point.
Yeah, so I look at Brian Cashman's comments, and I mean, we kind of knew they were going to be dealing infielders this offseason. I think, he can't, he's going to have his, as you mentioned, that kind of sugarcoating things, making sure that he backs his players. But I mean, it's obvious that, the Yankees are going to be dealing out of their infield depth this offseason, whether it's to offload money or to free up roster spots. They have to. They have too many good young prospects at that position for them to continue to roster guys who are not playing too well and are expensive and don't really serve a purpose on the team. It could be upgraded internally. Would I be shocked if the Yankees move the Peraza? No, but do I think it's going to happen? Also, no. I would say, the chance of them moving Oswald Peraza is under 50%. So, that's just me. This is the beginning of the offseason. We don't really know too much, but that's just kind of where I think they're headed. I think Peraza is the opening day shortstop. I look at Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Josh Donaldson, Gleyber Torres is the guys that, everyone's thinking about. Those guys are going to get dealt, or at least, you look at two of the three or all three, or at least one of the three. I think it's at least two of those three guys are getting dealt. I think Gleyber is the most likely and the most beneficial guy to keep because I think he's the best player of the three. And then I look at, the young guys, Cabrera, Volpe, Peraza. I think Peraza might be the most likely to be dealt, but again, under 50%, better than 50% chance he's still here. Cabrera's, I don't think is going to get dealt either. And then Volpe, they've treated him as untouchable, and I imagine there's not a player that's going to get opened up on this market, even if it's Ohtani. Ohtani's not warranting Anthony Volpe. He's on a one-year deal. So there's not a single player on the trade market that I can imagine becoming available that the Yankees are going to be moving Anthony Volpe for. So I think he'll still be here in the organization. But, ultimately, this we knew that they're going to be moving infielders. I don't think Brian Cashman said anything that's out of the ordinary. I know there were comments, I believe, about regarding, his process and how he still thinks the process was good, or regarding, injuries to the team. We know they were going to say that. I think it's fair to say that injuries hurt this team. I think that's not unfair to say. Is that a satisfying answer? Do you want to hear, your general manager kind of slam himself a little bit and say, I did this wrong, I did that wrong? Sure. Some people may prefer that, but that's not what's going to happen. I guess my message to Yankee fans is temper your expectations. Stop looking for press conferences with quotes of, we suck, we did this wrong, we could do this better, we have to do this better, this is terrible, this is awful. He might say something along the lines of, we could do this better, we could do that better. But he's not going to slam the organization as a whole. That doesn't make sense. I don't think that's a precedent that we've seen other organizations set. So I don't know why the Yankees should be held to the standard of doing that. And so, yeah, I think a lot of this was just stuff we kind of knew already, and it kind of just confirms we have Brian Cashman officially kind of stating it, kind of adding fuel to that fire of the infield depth. Things are going to be shaken up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kind of said it. Why would they go out and kind of diminish their efforts from last season? They had a team that was really, really good in the first half of the year. Really had some bad injury luck down the stretch. No JJ LeMahieu, no, Andrew Benintendi, no Frankie Montas, no Scott Efros, no Ron Marinaccio. There's a lot of players the Yankees were missing during that ALCS, ALDS run. And we could have used them, to be quite honest with you. Obviously, Aaron Hicks goes down, not the biggest loss in the world, but still, you lose a little bit of depth there. So, and then a couple bad decisions, they should have put Peraza in earlier and whatnot. But, this team definitely has the talent on the roster to compete. The question is, how far are they willing to go with their financial situation? Who is expendable, right? Right now, I don't think Oswald Peraza is expendable unless someone's offering you a just ridiculous haul for him, like a starting pitcher plus a starting infielder. Like, I just don't. I think that the potential for him is too high to give up on right now, especially if it's not going to be for a blockbuster deal in exchange. He's not someone I'm willing to like. I'm not going to throw in him and Gleyber Torres for Pablo Lopez. Like that's not was never on the table, and it shouldn't be on the table, right? I don't think Oswald Peraza is expendable unless it's an extreme return. Volpe, same thing. But you're looking at, Gleyber Torres, IKF may have a little bit of intrinsic value that the Yankees could extrapolate on. And then, you have Oswaldo Cabrera, who I also think is not tradable because he's a super utility man. He can play the outfield, all those positions at extremely high level, having never done it before. He's just a natural defensive player, and his switch hitting bat, he can hit well. Like we saw him go through stretches as a rookie of really, really solid performance. So I think that they want to roll with him. They want to roll with Peraza next year as those younger guys, but that makes a couple others expendable, right? Because you have DJ LeMahieu still on a long-term deal. They're not trading him, obviously. He can play third. He can play second base. So either you can make a decision at, with Josh Donaldson, or you can make a decision with Gleyber Torres. Now, the most expendable player on this thing, or at least the most valuable one that they could actually trade, is Gleyber Torres. We know what Gleyber Torres is. Do I like Gleyber Torres? Absolutely. I think, he's a pretty decent player. Finally got back into the positive WRC plus category. I think it was 115 WRC plus last season. So pretty solid player, but I think he also set personal bests in his hard hit rate and barrel percentage. So that's definitely a good thing for him in terms of his offensive, quality kind of elevating after a couple years down. Defensively, 985 fielding percentage. I think he had 7 errors, 9 defensive runs saved above average. He was break even at 0 with the outs above average. So, this is a player who got better defensively. 1 year of good defense definitely suggests that, he's heading in the right direction as a second baseman. I think he's pretty good there, but he's a streaky hitter, right? We know that he will go through like a month of just elite level performance, and then the next month, the guy couldn't hit this out of a barn. That's sometimes what his experience is. That's the Gleyber Torres experience. Some days he's amazing. Other days it looks like he isn't even waking up from his afternoon nap yet. So, I don't understand, I really, it's hard to put value on him because what he is, but they have a lot of control over him for the next 2 years. So the Yankees could say, let's cash in now because we know he's not getting better. But another team might see him and be like, he's an everyday second baseman for us. He is for the Yankees. We could give up something decent for that. 2 years of control. He's not going to be like overly expensive. So, if there's anyone on this infield kind of unit roster, who do you think is expendable right now? Who do you think they're actually might be willing to trade? I'm not willing to just drop IKF. He's a year of experience. He has a year left on his deal. I think you might be able to trade him for something.
Yeah. So I think the player we look at as the one that kind of doesn't really serve any purpose unless he's a starter, and I don't want him starting, is Josh Donaldson, right? You can make the argument IKF can be a good UTL player. You can make the argument. I mean, I wouldn't just say you can make the argument. I would definitely say Gleyber Torres is a good second baseman. I want to clarify, even though I'm not against trading him, he is a good second baseman. Like, he's a good baseball player. I want that to be recognized. I need that people to remember Gleyber Torres is good at baseball, right? He is a good baseball player. Even in his down years, right? His worst year was last year. He put up a 94 WRC plus. That was his worst season as a pro. He was still putting up an above average offensive season in 2020 at 107. I think that number can get up to 120 this year. I think, Gleyber's still 25. It's not impossible for him to get better. It's not impossible for him to have a not a peak year per se, but a better year than last year. I don't think that's impossible to say, especially, without trade rumors, without pressure about being traded. I think that could help him a little bit. I look at IKF and I say, I don't want him on the team next year because I don't think he should be starting. Maybe he could be a UTL guy, but that's expensive still. $6 million for a guy on your bench. Maybe you could do a little better price wise. But yeah, Donaldson's got to be the one that 100% has to go. There's no reason for him to be on this team next year. There's no excusable reason. I know there's going to be teams willing to take on some of the money and take a lottery ticket prospect to have Josh Donaldson on their team because they can flip him at the deadline if he performs anywhere close to decent as a baseball player. So let's not fool ourselves. There are going to be teams interested, right? I know a lot of the Yankee fans like, oh, who's going to take it? Who's going to take that deal? People will. Teams will. There is positive value for a lot of teams rebuilding to take on Josh Donaldson. So, let's not pretend like there's not. And then kind of my last point, you mentioned, with Peraza and Torres for Lopez. I 100% agree. That's not a deal I'm making right now. That's my starting shortstop. Oswald Peraza is my starting shortstop. That is how I view it right now. If you want my starting shortstop, who's going to be 23 in June, still hasn't turned 23 yet, has 6 years of control, is probably going to be a slightly better than league average hitter with great base running, especially with the bigger bases, and a phenomenal defender, probably a 3 to 4 WAR player for the next 6 years, you better give me something very valuable. That's what I want for Peraza. And I better have a good replacement. And you can say that Cabrera can move into that shortstop role, kind of be your stopgap. And I'm cool with that. But still, that's my starting shortstop. So I'm going to treat him as such. And then, for the rest of this infield, I look at it. LeMahieu can play a pretty solid third base. He's been a great defensive third baseman in his time in New York. Last year, he was absolutely stellar. And we can say, are we sure he's going to stay healthy throughout the full season? That's why you have Cabrera, right? That's why you have Cabrera right there. And that's why Volpe is going to, play a big role in this team, even if he doesn't start out with the team out of camp. And then you have, maybe you keep IKF. He's depth there. You have younger guys in the farm. I've mentioned multiple times Andres Chaparro because I do believe he's an impact player on this team within the next year or so. And then you can look into free agency and bring in a UTL guy if you absolutely want to. So, look, Josh Johnson's just there's nothing you can do with him. What are you going to do? Bench him, have a backup third base making $25 million a year? That's horrible value. That's terrible. That's a waste of a roster spot. Just cut bait, right? You could, like you said, IKF, maybe someone will trade for him. Maybe you could just non-tender him if no one wants to trade for him. Last year we were like, will anyone actually want to trade for Gary Sanchez? And lo and behold, someone did. Unfortunately, it came with Josh Johnson, IKF, but you can always non-tender, just trade the guy. There's going to be some way to get rid of him. You're not attached to him at the hip. And then as for Gleyber, I think there's an actual market for Gleyber Torres. I think teams would actually want Gleyber Torres. So that's not a concern. I'm not concerned about if I have to move him, how do I move him? But I do think that Gleyber is a big part of this team next year if he's still here. And then Donaldson, he just stinks. I can't have him on this team.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, his offensive quality has fallen off year over year, just on watching him degrade as he gets older. So, I don't know what I know they have to say good things about him. He's on the roster, obviously, but there's no way in hell he's going to resurrect his career and look like his, MVP caliber self at 37 years old. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. So, at $21 million, we have a lot of better options. When Volpe is ready and Ryan Cashman said it, he said that Volpe is going to be in the mix there. Who's to say that, DJ doesn't play second base or DJ plays third base and Peraza goes over to second base or third base, this is a situation where the Yankees have a lot of options and all of those options are extremely cheap. And it's directly feeding reps and opportunities to you young star prospects who ultimately need that experience. If you can get Peraza, Oswaldo, and by the way, Oswaldo Cabrera as a switch hitter is going to be awesome next year because the shift is now not a thing. So, that switch hitting, that lefty bat for Cabrera gets even better. And that's also another big reason why keeping Anthony Rizzo is a big deal too, because, he had so many outs because of the shift. He's going to get on base so much after banning it. So, I'm definitely looking at this team if you even get, half of our expectations for Volpe and Peraza next year, we're in good shape. You have a lot of cheap young players at essential positions. You can afford to keep Aaron Judge, no problem. That should not even be a conversation. The Yankees should be keeping Aaron Judge because they have so much good youth that will keep the price tag down for big money positions for a long time. And you can continue to invest at other spots. If the Yankees walked away with Judge and Justin Verlander and maybe Andrew Benintendi as their only three signings, and then retaining Rizzo, if they went, Judge, Verlander, Rizzo, and Benintendi, I'd walk away from this offseason we are in great shape. We are in great shape. You have left field lockdown, right field lockdown, first base lockdown, and you have your slew of youth that is super cheap. Manning those key positions. So I think that would be an ideal situation if I were Brian Cashman.
Yeah, and I'll kind of throw in my last thoughts here. I'll keep it brief. But as you mentioned, if you bring back Rizzo, Benintendi, and Judge, and you add Verlander, right? and you add in and you fuse your youth properly. This team's going to have a very successful season. I 100% agree. I think a lot of people kind of have this Brian Cashman's just going to run it back. This is going to be terrible. I don't think it's running it back.
He's never done that.
Right. I don't think it's running it back if your postseason, your game one lineup has Benintendi, Bader, Peraza, I guess Volpe would be involved somehow, or maybe Cabrera, right? LeMahieu as well. These are guys who are not, Bader was, and Peraza was for a little bit. But having a full season of Peraza, having a full season of Volpe, having a full season of Cabrera, or part of a season of Volpe, having a full season of Benintendi, having a full season of Bader, right? That's not running it back. Having LeMahieu for postseason run, that's not running it back. That's a completely different baseball team. And we can sit here and complain about it. We can sit here and pretend that's not a good offseason, but everyone would have everyone wanted Benintendi at the deadline. Everyone wanted Anthony Rizzo back. Everyone wants Aaron Judge back. Everyone wants the Yankees to have a loaded pitching staff. So if that's the route the Yankees take, if you're a Yankee fan and you're complaining, right, what else do you want, right? Who's the superstar outfield that isn't Aaron Judge that's available? You could argue Brandon Nimmo's very good. I think Brandon Nimmo's very good. But it's probably picking between Verlander and Nimmo. Would you rather have Verlander and Benintendi, or Nimmo and, like, I don't know, Sean Manaea, right? I would take Verlander and Benintendi. I think running it back I don't think it's possible for this team to run it back without keeping Donaldson, IKF, setting Peraza down, not playing Cabrera much, putting Hicks instead of Bader, right? You'd have to go out of your way to make your team worse to run it back, because there are a lot of guys who weren't here at the beginning of last year that are going to be here in the beginning of the year, who weren't involved in the postseason run, who are healthy for a regular season run, and hopefully healthy for the postseason. I think this team's inherently going to get better next year. And I think part of that is bringing Judge back, bringing your guys back. But, this infusion of youth is going to help this team a lot.
Yeah, and if you manage to offload Donaldson and save $10 million on his deal, that's Andrew Benintendi, essentially. Rizzo might cost you a pretty penny because, he's a valuable piece and he's a good locker room guy as well. And there's not really anybody that can supplement that. But I agree with you, man. Like, the Yankees are not going to sit still. When have they ever sat still? Brian Cashman spends every offseason. The problem is he spends and he trades, and most of his deals are not that good. That's the problem. It's like, he does what he's aggressive. Like, he's never not been aggressive. He's always trying to get this team to be better. Problem is, a lot of his decision-making is flawed at times, and a lot of those deals end up butting him in the butt, whether it's due to injury or whatever it might be. So, think about all the deals that we never even saw the players playing, notably Jacoby Ellsbury. So it's like, I don't think that Cashman's going to sit here and do nothing. That's never been his style. I think he's going to be aggressive. He's going to make some big moves. He's going to try and do as much as Hal Steinbrenner lets him. At the end of the day, though, those moves got to pan out, and people got to stay healthy. So that's really what it boils down to, my friends. I'd love to hear your perspectives below on this infield situation, all the discussions that we just really had, and about this team moving forward. There's definitely a lot to be excited about, and I think this offseason is going to be fun nonetheless. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. Make sure to enjoy your Thursday, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.